I should have known something was wrong when the laughter stopped. My wellness studio had been my sanctuary for 5 years. The exposed brick walls, the gentle buzz of conversation between clients, the way sunlight streamed through the tall windows every afternoon. I'd built this place from nothing, transformed it from an abandoned warehouse into a thriving business. Today, though, that familiar warmth felt different, hollow. I was reviewing client files at the front desk when the silence hit me. Jessica and Peyton had been chatting in the break room, their voices carrying that conspiratorial tone that usually meant office gossip. Then, abruptly, nothing. "Carmen," Peyton called out, her voice strange and tight. "Could you come here for a second?" I shouldn't have gone. Some part of me knew. The same part that noticed Mike's late nights at the office, the password changes on his phone, the way he stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings. But I walked toward that break room anyway, my heels clicking against the hardwood floors like a countdown. Jessica was staring at her phone, her face drained of color. When she saw me, she quickly pressed it to her chest, but not before I caught a glimpse of the screen. A photo. Mike, my Mike, pressing some woman against a wall, his hands tangled in her long, dark hair. "I'm so sorry," Peyton whispered. "I thought you should know." The room tilted sideways. I gripped the doorframe, my fingernails scraping against the paint. "Show me." Jessica shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "Carmen, maybe we should—" "Show me the fucking picture, Jessica." Her hands trembled as she held out the phone. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m. yesterday. I recognized the wall, the distinctive blue-gray paint of the new hotel downtown, and the woman. The longer I stared, the more familiar she became. That hair, those shoes, the delicate silver bracelet I'd helped Mike pick out for Jessica's birthday last month, my best friend, my husband. The betrayal so complete it felt like a physical blow. "How long?" The words came out steady, surprising even me. Jessica's mascara was running now. "Carmen, please." "How long?" "6 months," she whispered. "It just happened. We never meant—" I held up my hand, silencing her. 6 months. While I was planning our anniversary dinner, while she was helping me choose new living room furniture, while they both looked me in the eye, day after day, and smiled. "Get out." My voice didn't sound like my own anymore. "Both of you. Now." "We need to talk about this," Jessica pleaded. "Let me explain. If you're not out of my studio in the next 30 seconds, I'm calling security and having you removed for trespassing." I met her eyes, letting her see exactly what I thought of her explanation. "And Jessica, that friendship bracelet you're wearing, the matching one to mine, take it off and leave it on the desk." They left. I stood in the break room, staring at the wall where we'd hung photos from the studio's opening day. Mike and I cutting the ribbon, Jessica popping champagne, all of us laughing, celebrating, believing in something that was apparently a lie from the start. My phone buzzed. "Mike. Jessica just called me crying. We need to talk." I watched my hands type the response, oddly detached. "Yes, we do. About the studio's ownership shares, and the prenup clause about infidelity." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Don't do anything stupid, Carmen. You're upset, I get it. But if you try to push me out of the business, I'll fight back. Hard." The threat should have scared me. Instead, it crystallized something inside me, that cold, hard certainty that comes with absolute clarity. I'd given this man my trust, my love, my dreams. He'd taken them all and twisted them into weapons to use against me. I looked around the studio, my studio, and thought about all the times I'd compromised, backed down, kept the peace. The careful way I'd built this life, thinking if I just made everything perfect enough, no one would leave. No one would betray me. Well, they had anyway. And now? Now I had nothing left to lose. I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I'd saved months ago but never called. Truman Erickson, the journalist who'd been sniffing around Mike's business practices last year, the one he'd been so nervous about. My finger hovered over the number as another text from Mike came through. "Don't make me destroy everything you've built." I smiled, feeling the first spark of something that wasn't pain, something that felt dangerously like purpose. "Too late," I whispered and pressed call. The garden had been Mike's idea. Every wellness studio needs a meditation space. he'd said, sketching plans on a napkin. Now I sat on the stone bench he'd picked out, watching dawn creep over the Japanese maples we'd planted together, and tried to remember how to breathe. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since yesterday. Jessica, Mike, even Peyton, probably feeling guilty about her role in everything. I'd turned it off after the third voicemail from Mike threatening legal action. Let them panic. Let them wonder. I thought I'd find you here. I didn't turn around. Serenity's heels crunched on the gravel path as she approached. Of all my business associates, she was the only one who'd understand coming to the studio at 5 a.m. to think. The lawyers delivered these an hour ago. She set a thick envelope beside me. Mike works fast. Of course he does. I touched the papers but couldn't bring myself to open them. He's trying to scare me into backing down. Serenity sat beside me, her silk blazer incongruous against the morning dew. Are you? You know what's funny? I plucked a maple leaf, turning it over in my hands. I kept thinking about that night he proposed, how perfect it was. Now I wonder if he was already planning this, figuring out how to get his name on the ownership papers, how to trap me. Carmen, the studio's account is empty. My voice cracked. Every penny I've earned in the past 5 years, gone. Transferred yesterday afternoon, right after Jessica showed me that photo. Like he knew exactly when I'd find out. Serenity went very still. That's not legal. Neither is what I'm going to do to him. I finally met her eyes. The question is, whose side will you be on when things get ugly? She studied me for a long moment. You really called Truman? Meeting her for coffee in an hour. I stood, brushing leaves from my skirt. Mike's not the only one who can work fast. Be careful, that woman has been investigating Mike's dealings for months. She knows things, Serenity, things that could destroy him. I smiled, but it felt wrong on my face. And now she has me. The coffee shop was 3 blocks from Mike's office. I chose it deliberately, knowing he'd see my car parked outside. Truman was already waiting, her reporter's notebook open on the table. I wondered when you'd call, she said as I sat down. Though I expected it months ago, when the first allegations surfaced. I frowned. What allegations? She pulled out her phone, scrolled through some files. 3 women, all claiming your husband used his position at the investment firm to manipulate their accounts. All cases quietly settled. She looked up. You didn't know? No. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. I didn't know anything. That's why I'm here. Truman leaned forward. I've been building a case, but I need an insider. Someone who can access records, provide context, someone with nothing left to lose. My phone buzzed. Mike again. This time I answered. Where are you? He sounded desperate. Good. Having coffee with a friend. Truman says hello. The silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Don't do this, Carmen. Please. We can work something out. Like those other women you worked things out with? I watched his reflection in the window across the street, standing outside his office, phone pressed to his ear. How many were there, Mike? How many lives did you ruin while I kept your house and planned your parties and believed your lies? Everything I did for us. For the future we talked about. No. I stood up, letting him see me clearly through the glass. Everything you did for yourself. And now I'm going to do something for me. I hung up, turned back to Truman. If we do this, it goes all the way. Everything he's done, everything he's hidden. I want it all public. It'll get messy, she warned. Your reputation is already ruined. Might as well make it count for something. I pulled out my own notebook, the one where I'd documented every suspicious transaction, every inconsistency I'd noticed and ignored over the years. But first, there's something you should know about a series of offshore accounts he opened last month, and about my friend Jessica's sudden promotion at his firm. Truman's eyes lit up as she started taking notes. Across the street, Mike was still watching, his face pale with recognition of what he'd just lost. I smiled and waved, feeling that dangerous spark grow stronger. By tonight, the first article would go live. By tomorrow, his carefully constructed world would begin to crumble, and I'd be there to watch it burn. The mirror in my home office hadn't changed, but I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and my usually pristine makeup was hours old. Behind me, the house echoed with a silence that felt like a living thing. Truman's first article had gone live 3 hours ago. My phone was a war zone of notifications, concerned friends, angry texts from Mike's family, and a stream of emails from clients either canceling their memberships or expressing their support. The studio's social media was chaos. I touched the glass, tracing the outline of my reflection. "What are you doing?" I whispered. A door slammed downstairs. "Carmen?" Jessica's voice. "I know you're here. We need to talk." My heart hammered against my ribs as I moved to the hallway. Jessica stood at the bottom of the stairs, still wearing her work clothes, her face streaked with tears. "How did you get in?" She held up a key. "You never asked for it back." "Right." I descended slowly, each step deliberate. "Like I never asked why you suddenly had enough money to buy a Tesla last month. Funny how things slip your mind. That article..." She swallowed hard. "Those accusations about the promotions, the special treatment. People are asking questions at work. Mike's furious." "Is he?" I reached the bottom step. "Tell me, did he promise to protect you, to take care of everything?" Her flinch told me everything. "That's what he does, isn't it? Makes you feel special, chosen. Until suddenly you're in so deep you can't get out." It wasn't like that. But her hand went to her throat, a nervous tell I recognized from 15 years of friendship. "I loved him. Love him." "And me?" The question came out softer than I intended. "Did you ever love me?" "Of course I did." She stepped forward, reaching for my hand. I backed away. "Carmen, you were my best friend, my sister. That's why this is killing me. Please, we can fix this." "Fix what?" I gestured around the empty house. "My marriage? My business? The friendship you destroyed?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "Or maybe you mean fix the evidence. Make it all go away so you and Mike can go back to pretending you're not monsters." Her face hardened. "You have no idea what you're doing. The people Mike knows, the power he has." "There it is." I smiled, remembering Truman's words about the other women. "The threat. I was wondering when it would come." "It's not a threat, it's a warning." She pulled out her phone, showed me an email. "The board is meeting tomorrow. They're going to vote on removing you as studio director. Mike's already convinced half of them." Ice slid down my spine. The studio was my life, my creation. Without it, get out. My voice shook. "And leave the key." "Carmen, now." She set the key on the side table, hesitated. For what it's worth, I never meant for any of this to happen. Neither did I. I watched her walk to the door, but it did. And now we all have to live with the consequences. After she left, I sank onto the stairs, hands trembling. The board meeting changed everything. I needed leverage, something bigger than what Truman had published. My phone buzzed, a text from Serenity. "Check your email, now." The attachment was a series of screenshots, private messages between Mike and someone named Peyton. My stomach lurched as I read them. Dates, times, account numbers. Evidence of something far worse than infidelity or financial manipulation. I dialed Serenity. "Where did you get these?" "Peyton came to me," she said. "She's scared, Carmen. What they were doing with those accounts. It's not just unethical, it's illegal." My mind raced. The board meeting is a smokescreen. They're trying to silence you before this gets out. She paused. "What are you going to do?" I looked at my reflection in the window, at the woman I'd become in just 2 days. The old Carmen would have backed down, would have tried to salvage what she could. But the old Carmen died the moment she saw that photo on Jessica's phone. "Send everything to Truman," I said, "and call Nicholas. Tell him to meet me at the studio first thing tomorrow." The board won't know what hit them. I stood, straightening my shoulders. "Oh, and Serenity, thank you for choosing the right side." After we hung up, I walked through the dark house one last time. Tomorrow would change everything. The thought should have terrified me, but instead I felt strangely calm. Let them try to take my studio. Let them think they had me cornered. They had no idea what I was willing to do to protect what was mine. Thunder rattled the studio windows as I read the anonymous text for the 10th time. "Back off or everything burns." 3 more like it had arrived since midnight, each one darker than the last. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the empty parking lot. Nicholas paced behind me, his usual calm demeanor fractured. These aren't just threats, Carmen. They know details about the studio's insurance, about transactions from years ago, things only insiders would know. Mike's trying to scare me. But my voice lacked conviction. The messages felt different, colder, more calculated than Mike's emotional manipulation. My phone lit up with Truman's call. I put her on speaker. "The story's bigger than we thought," she said without preamble. "Those accounts Peyton flagged? They're connected to at least 3 other investment firms. We're talking about systematic fraud across the entire sector." Nicholas stopped pacing. "How high up?" "High enough that people are starting to panic. My editor's getting pressure to kill the story. And Carmen?" She hesitated. "Someone broke into my apartment last night. My laptop's gone." The thunder seemed louder suddenly, more menacing. "Are you safe?" "Staying with a friend, but you need to be careful. These people." A sharp knock cut her off. Through the glass doors, I saw Jessica, drenched from the rain, her mascara running down her cheeks. "I have to go," I told Truman. "Keep digging." Nicholas moved to block the door. "You don't have to talk to her." "Yes, I do." I touched his arm. "Stay close." Jessica burst in the moment I unlocked the door, rain dripping onto the hardwood floors I'd chosen so carefully years ago. "They're going to kill him," she gasped. "Mike, he called me an hour ago, said he had evidence, proof of everything, said he was going to turn himself in." She grabbed my arms. "Then someone broke into his office. He's not answering his phone. Carmen, please. Whatever you think of us, he doesn't deserve—" "Slow down." I led her to a chair, my mind racing. "What evidence?" "Documents, records, years of them." She wiped her eyes, smearing makeup further. "He kept everything, Carmen. Insurance against his partners. But now—" My phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. "Final warning. Stop now or lose everything." Jessica saw it over my shoulder and went pale. "Oh God, they're really going to do it." "Do what?" "The studio." She looked around wildly. "The insurance policy. Mike told them— He told them how to make it look like an accident." Understanding hit like a physical blow. The empty parking lot. The storm. The perfect cover for— "Nicholas." I was already moving. "Call the police. Now." The lights went out. In the darkness, I heard footsteps on the back stairs. Jessica whimpered. Nicholas was shouting into his phone. And underneath it all, a faint hissing sound. "Gas," I whispered. "They're going to burn it down with us inside." "The emergency exit." Nicholas grabbed my arm. "We need to—" "No." I pulled away, fumbling for my phone's flashlight. "The safe. In my office. Mike's not the only one who keeps insurance." "Carmen, there's no time." But I was already running, guided by muscle memory through the dark studio. Behind me, Jessica called my name. The hissing grew louder. My office door was locked. I could smell the gas now, sharp and dangerous. With shaking hands, I entered the safe combination. Inside lay a single USB drive, backed up in 3 cloud locations, containing every suspicious email, every questionable transaction I'd noticed over the years but never confronted Mike about. I grabbed it just as the first explosion rocked the building. Heat bloomed behind me. Smoke filled the air. Through the chaos, I heard Nicholas shouting, Jessica screaming. The studio, my dream, my creation, was becoming my tomb. Unless— I ran toward the sound of their voices, clutching the drive that now felt like a lifeline. We burst out the emergency exit seconds before the main gas line blew, the force throwing us onto the wet pavement. From the safety of the parking lot, we watched my studio burn. Fire trucks wailed in the distance, too late to save anything but the surrounding buildings. Years of work, of sacrifice, reduced to flames and ash. Jessica touched my shoulder. "Carmen, I'm so sorry. I never thought—" "Don't." I held up the drive, saw understanding dawn in her eyes. "You're going to tell me everything, every name, every account, every dirty secret. Because this wasn't just about you and Mike anymore. They tried to kill us." Nicholas was already on the phone with Truman. In the distance, news vans were arriving, drawn by the inferno. I stood in the rain, watching my world burn, and felt something shift inside me. They thought fire would destroy me. Instead, it had forged something new, something dangerous. The investors' conference room felt like a cage. 8 pairs of eyes watched me from around the mahogany table, some sympathetic, others calculating. The morning news played silently on a wall-mounted TV, showing footage of my studio's smoldering ruins on repeat. The insurance investigation is ongoing, I said, keeping my voice steady. But we all know this wasn't an accident. Richard, the head investor, cleared his throat. Carmen, we understand you're going through a difficult time. The divorce, these allegations about Mike, now this unfortunate incident. Unfortunate? I clicked open my laptop. Is that what we're calling attempted murder now? Murmurs rippled around the table. Serenity, sitting to my right, squeezed my arm in warning. But I was done playing nice. Before we continue, I said, I should mention I'm recording this meeting, for legal purposes. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Richard's fake sympathy vanished. That won't be necessary. Oh, I think it is. I turned my screen around, showing them the document I'd spent all night preparing, especially given what's in this report. Would anyone like to explain why 3 board members transferred massive sums to offshore accounts the day before my studio burned down? Silence. Then chaos. How dare you? These accusations. You have no proof. Actually, Serenity's voice cut through the noise. We have quite a lot of proof, and copies of everything are already with the SEC. Richard stood, his face purple. This meeting is over. Security will escort you out. Sit down. My tone made him freeze. You're going to want to hear this part. I pulled out the USB drive, the one I'd risked my life to save. Mike kept records of everything, every bribe, every fraudulent transaction, every name involved in this little scheme, including yours, Richard. The TV caught my eye. Breaking news banner. Investment fraud investigation widens. Multiple firms implicated. Perfect timing. Your phones are probably buzzing right now, I continued. That's Truman's latest article going live, the one naming names. I smiled. Well, some names. The rest depend on what happens in the next 5 minutes. What do you want? Richard's voice was hoarse. My studio shares, all of them, signed over to me, free and clear. I slid a document across the table. In exchange, certain names stay private, for now. You're blackmailing us. No, I'm negotiating. Blackmail would be threatening to reveal how long you've known about the fraud, how many people you've helped Mike destroy. I leaned forward. Sign the papers, Richard. Before I decide negotiation isn't enough. One by one, they signed. Even Richard, his hand shaking with suppressed rage. As security let us out, Serenity whispered, "That was dangerous." They tried to burn me alive. Dangerous is all I have left. My phone buzzed. Jessica requesting a meeting. After last night's revelations, she'd spent hours with Truman, detailing everything she knew. I'd ignored her calls since then. Go, Serenity said. I'll handle the paperwork. I found Jessica at our old lunch spot, a quiet cafe where we'd once spent hours planning my wedding. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. Mike's dead. She said it before I could sit down. They found his body an hour ago, made it look like suicide. The world tilted sideways. Despite everything, despite the hatred and betrayal, I'd never wanted. When? Last night, after. She couldn't finish. Carmen, I know you hate me, but they're going to keep killing people. Everyone who knows anything. Her voice cracked. I'm next, unless what? Unless you stop. Give them what they want. Tell Truman to kill the story. For a moment, I saw it. The easier path. Stop digging. Let the truth stay buried. Maybe then the threats would end. The violence, the death. But I remembered the gas filling my studio, the heat of the explosion. Mike's body cooling in some morgue because he'd finally decided to do the right thing. No, I said softly. They don't get to win. Not after everything they've taken. Then help me disappear. Jessica grabbed my hand. Please, you're the only one I trust. The irony should have made me laugh. Instead, I felt tired. So tired. My phone lit up with a text from Truman. Found something bigger. Much bigger. Need to meet now. I looked at Jessica, my former best friend, my betrayer, now possibly the key to unraveling everything. Okay, I said. But first, you're going to tell me everything you know about Richard's connection to the overseas accounts. Every detail. Because Mike was dead, my studio was ash, and the only way out was through, no matter who burned along the way. Moonlight filtered through my bedroom window as I stared at the ceiling, too wired to sleep. Mike's funeral was tomorrow. My lawyer had advised against attending, but something pulled at me. Maybe the need for closure, or maybe just masochism. My phone glowed. Another message from an unknown number, but this one was different. Meet me at the garden, now. P. Peyton. The last time I'd seen her was the day everything exploded, literally and figuratively. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but she'd been the first to expose Mike's dealings. I owed her that much. The studio's garden was eerily beautiful in the moonlight, the charred remains of the building casting strange shadows. Peyton stood by the Japanese maple, looking over her shoulder every few seconds. "You shouldn't be here," she said as I approached. "They're watching." "Who's watching, Peyton?" "Everyone." She grabbed my arm. "Listen, what Truman found, it's bigger than fraud. The overseas accounts, the shell companies, they're just the surface. This goes all the way to—" A twig snapped in the darkness. Peyton froze. "Inside," I whispered, pulling her toward the garden shed, the only structure that had survived the fire. We barely made it through the door when headlights swept the garden. "They followed me." Peyton's voice shook. "I'm sorry. I thought I was careful." "Who followed you?" "Richard's people, the ones who—" She swallowed hard. "The ones who killed Mike." My heart stopped. "You saw?" "Not directly. But I have proof. Security footage from his building. They made it look like suicide, but—" The shed door burst open. Two men in dark suits entered, their faces expressionless. Behind them stood Richard. "Ladies," he said pleasantly. "Lovely evening for a chat." "Run!" Peyton shoved me toward the back door, but one of the men caught my arm. The other grabbed Peyton, pressing something against her side. She went rigid. "Now then," Richard stepped closer. "Let's discuss that footage you mentioned." "Let her go." My voice was steadier than I felt. "She doesn't know anything." "Oh, but she does." He smiled. "Just like you know things, Carmen. Things that could hurt a lot of powerful people. The question is, what are we going to do about that?" "You can't kill us both," I said. "Not here. Not now. Too many questions." "Kill you?" He laughed. "My dear, there are so many better options. For instance, did you know your friend here has been embezzling from her previous employers? We have proof. Very convincing proof." Peyton's eyes widened. "That's not true." "It will be. Just like there will be proof that you, Carmen, set the fire yourself. Insurance fraud. Tragic, really. The stress of your divorce, your failing business. No one would believe that. They'll believe the evidence. The same evidence that will clear my name and everyone else you've accused." He nodded to his men. Unless I back off." The pieces clicked. "Delete everything. Tell Truman I made it all up." "Smart girl." He pulled out his phone. "I have the statement prepared. You just need to sign." My mind raced. If I signed, everything would disappear. The truth about Mike's death, the fraud, all of it. If I refused, a flash of movement caught my eye. Through the shed window, I saw Truman crouched in the shadows, her phone raised, recording everything. I just needed to keep him talking. "What about Jessica?" I asked. "She's already told the police." "Jessica won't be a problem." His smile turned cruel. "In fact, she's the one who told us about this meeting." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. After everything, she was still choosing them. "So what's it going to be?" Richard held out his phone. "Your signature or your freedom?" I looked at Peyton, saw the terror in her eyes, thought about Mike's body, about my burning studio, about all the lives these people had destroyed. "Neither." I lunged forward, knocking the phone from his hand. Peyton stomped on her captor's foot and broke free. The other man reached for something in his jacket. "Now!" I screamed. The garden exploded with light as police cars emerged from hiding. Richard's men froze. Through the chaos, I saw Truman running toward the officers, phone raised triumphantly. "You recorded everything." Richard realized too late. This whole meeting was a trap. I straightened my jacket. "Did you really think Jessica would betray me twice? She's been working with us for days." As the police led them away, Truman approached with a grim smile. "We got it all. The threats, the admission about Mike's death, everything. It's not over, Richard called back. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Maybe not, but watching him disappear into a police car, I felt something shift. The end game was approaching, and for the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I was winning. The courthouse steps felt endless. Each click of my heels echoed through the marble hallway, carrying the weight of every decision, every betrayal, every loss that had led to this moment. Behind me, Truman and Serenity walked in protective formation. Ahead, a sea of reporters waited. They're all here, Truman murmured. Every major network. My hands trembled as I adjusted my blazer, the same one I'd worn the day I opened my studio. Is Jessica ready? In position, the documents are secure. The grand jury room doors loomed before us. Inside, 12 people would hear everything. The complete web of fraud, murder, and corruption that had destroyed so many lives. Richard and his associates sat at the front, their expensive suits and smug smiles a final attempt at projecting control. I took my seat at the witness stand, feeling their stares like physical pressure. Richard's lawyer approached, all predatory confidence. Ms. Carmen, he began, isn't it true that your testimony today is motivated by revenge? A spurned wife's attempt to destroy her husband's legacy? My husband's legacy? The words tasted bitter. Mike destroyed his own legacy when he chose to participate in fraud that ruined countless lives. Alleged fraud, the lawyer corrected, for which you've provided no concrete evidence. I smiled, thinking of Jessica waiting outside with her files. Would bank records from the Cayman Islands count as concrete evidence? The lawyer faltered. Richard sat straighter. Or perhaps, I continued, the video confession from last night, the one where your client admitted to orchestrating my husband's murder? Chaos erupted. Richard's lawyers huddled, whispering frantically. The prosecutor stood, presenting a flash drive to the jury. Your Honor, she said, we have new evidence to submit. Richard's mask finally cracked. You can't. Actually, I cut in. We can. Jessica? The doors opened. Jessica walked in, carrying a thick folder. She didn't look at Richard or his associates. Her eyes were fixed on me, steady and determined. Ms. Reynolds, the prosecutor said, please tell the jury what you discovered while working as Mr. Richard's executive assistant. For the next hour, Jessica methodically laid out everything, every transaction, every threat, every crime she'd witnessed. Her voice shook only once when describing Mike's last night alive. He called me, she said, told me he was going to make it right. Then, she took a shuddering breath. Then I heard the door break down, the struggle. His last words were, tell Carmen I'm sorry. I gripped the stand until my knuckles went white, forcing back tears. Richard's lawyer jumped up. Objection, this is hearsay. The witness has phone records, the prosecutor interrupted, and security footage. Richard stood suddenly. This is absurd. You think your little evidence matters? You have no idea who you're dealing with. One phone call and what? I met his eyes. Your powerful friends will save you? Check your phone, Richard. Check the news. He did. His face went ashen as he read the headlines breaking across every major outlet. Global financial conspiracy exposed. Multiple arrests and investment fraud case. Top executives indicted. You see, I said quietly, while you were focused on silencing me, Truman was following your money. All of it. To everyone. The FBI has been making arrests all morning. You're lying. Like you lied about Mike's death being suicide? Like you lied about the studio fire? I stood, my voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent room. You took everything from me. My marriage, my business, my best friend. You thought that would break me. I pulled out one final document, the studio's insurance payout signed that morning. Instead, it showed me exactly who I am, what I'm capable of. Richard lunged forward, but security was faster. As they led him away, he shouted, "This isn't over." Actually, I called after him, it is. The studio reopens next month. Bigger, better, and the first class? I smiled. It's called Rising from Ashes. The grand jury's decision was unanimous. Outside, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. Jessica touched my arm. Was it worth it? She whispered. Everything we lost? I thought about Mike, about our shattered dreams and broken trust, about the studio that had burned but would rise again, about the strength I'd found in the darkness. We didn't lose everything, I said finally. We found the truth. And maybe, I squeezed her hand, maybe we found ourselves too. Together we faced the cameras, stepping into the light of a world we'd helped reshape, not as victims, not as betrayed women seeking revenge, as survivors who'd chosen justice over silence, truth over fear, and found power in their own voices. The headlines tomorrow would tell our story, but we'd already written the ending. The construction dust made everything look ethereal in the morning light. Workers moved through the studio space, transforming what fire had claimed into something new, different, stronger. I ran my hand along a freshly installed beam, feeling the rough texture beneath my fingers. The exposed brick walls remained, scarred but standing, like me. The contractor says we're ahead of schedule. Serenity appeared beside me, tablet in hand. Though I still think you're crazy for keeping the garden. The garden stays. I walked to the window, looking out at the Japanese maples. They'd survived the fire somehow, their leaves now tinged with autumn red. Some things are worth saving. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Turn on the news, now. The workers had a small TV set up in the break room. I caught the end of the headline. Richard found dead in his cell. Apparent suicide, the reporter continued. Sources say a note was found claiming responsibility for multiple deaths, including local businessman Mike Johnson. Serenity touched my shoulder. Carmen? He took the fall. My voice sounded distant. To protect someone bigger. Does it matter? It's over. Was it? I thought of the unsigned documents in my safe, the ones Mike had died protecting, the ones that pointed to names even Richard had feared. My phone rang. Truman. Tell me you've seen it, she said without preamble. Richard's death? Just now? No, the email. The one that just went out to every major news outlet. She paused. Someone leaked everything, all of it. Names, dates, accounts, things even we didn't know about. My heart stopped. What? Check your inbox. There it was, sent from an anonymous account. The subject line read, For Carmen. I opened it, Serenity reading over my shoulder. Pages of documents, transaction records, emails, and a message. You were right. Some things are worth saving, even if it costs everything. P. Peyton, I whispered. She disappeared last night, Truman said. Left a resignation letter at her firm. No one knows where she went. But I knew. She'd chosen truth over safety, just like Mike had in the end. Just like I had. A commotion at the front door drew my attention. Jessica stood there, looking uncertain. I saw the news, she said. Thought you might want company. Once, her presence would have sparked anger, pain. Now I felt something different. Understanding, maybe. Or forgiveness. Not for her sake, but for mine. Help me with something? I gestured to the boxes by the wall. The new meditation cushions need arranging. We worked in companionable silence, placing cushions in a circle, like we used to, before everything burned. I keep thinking about that day, Jessica said finally. When you found out, if I could go back, we can't go back. I straightened a cushion, but maybe we can go forward, differently. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'd like that. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. The text contained only an address and a time. Tomorrow morning. What is it? Serenity asked. I showed her the address. Her eyes widened. That's the corporate headquarters of everyone named in Peyton's leak. I smiled. Where the board is meeting tomorrow to deal with the fallout. You're not thinking of going. Actually, I said, I am. They thought burning down my studio would silence me. Instead, it gave me a voice. Time they heard it in person. Jessica stood. I'll go with you. We all will, Serenity added. I looked around the studio, at the scars and the renewal, the endings and beginnings all mixed together. At these women who'd moved from enemies to allies, from betrayers to defenders. Through the windows, sunset painted the garden in shades of gold. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new truths to uncover. But tonight, first, I said, we have a studio to finish building. We worked into the evening, arranging furniture, hanging mirrors, preparing for opening day. Each piece felt like a declaration. I am here. I survived. I chose truth. As darkness fell, I stood in the center of what we'd created. Not just a studio risen from ashes, but a testament to every woman who'd ever been told to stay quiet, stay small, stay safe. We were done staying anything. We were ready to rise, together.